Welcome to the Universal Monsters Podcast, the show where two white guys pre-cancel themselves about 5 to 10 years from now. I'm your host, Jake, author of The Devil's League and creator of hot quality content, and with me, as always, is the creator and host of Screenplay Archaeology, Kieran Midhead, aka Bruce. How you doing?
Pretty good.
Every month, my fine co-host and I break down a bunch of Universal Monster news across movies, shows, theme parks, physical media, and anything else regarding these classic monsters. After that, we discuss the topic and the title of the episode. So, are you ready for just one piece of news?
I actually have a smaller piece of news. I forgot about it for a second, but...
Well, good, because mine's big. Why don't you want to take the lead on this one?
There is a... Scream Factory is releasing a special edition of the 2010 Wolfman. I didn't look at the specs or anything, but I've seen... Because the way Scream Factory releases work is that one side of the insert will have, like, the movie poster, and then the other side will have, like, custom art. The custom art looks really bad. It makes it look like a cheesy romance novel where he's, like, cradling a woman. It looks really dumb, but I might pick that up. I don't know. I don't mind upgrading that one.
I don't have that fond memories of 2010's Wolfman, but I liked it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
so
I'm kind of the
that's
same.
interesting to know for fans of that movie.
I enjoy it, but it's just a lot of it just doesn't work.
I think what people took away from that movie mostly is the makeup and the effects are just top notch. Yeah, that's great that that movie's getting a little bit more praise than it usually gets. It's kind of forgotten in pop culture, even in the Universal Monster community, usually. Well, it's also Wolfman related. Look, I usually scour the internet for Universal Monster news of any kind, but really there's nothing except this one big, juicy topic, so let's not waste any time here. Wolfman 2025 has just released a new trailer, and it rocks.
Yes.
This is exactly what I was looking for in terms of a new trailer. It's a stylistic update. It simplistically shows you the viewpoint of a man making this transformation without dialogue. In fact, the lack of dialogue is a plot point, it seems like. I'm so interested. This is exactly what I knew would happen. I didn't know how he'd adapt it, but I knew Leigh Whannell has that special magic when it comes to these types of movies. Invisible Man was such a new flavor while keeping what that monster really was. This is the same idea where it's a werewolf. It's a classic werewolf story, but he's giving it something that you haven't really seen depicted this way before. This is why I was so hyped. I'm so excited for this stupid movie, man.
It's a great trailer. It is so weird being excited for a January horror movie.
Yeah.
And it's crazy we got another trailer this soon.
It is. I mean, well, it's horror. It's only a few months away. You know, if it's like a blockbuster, it's going to be a 6-month trailer. So this is about half that. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But, I mean, it's such a contrast to the last Wolfman movie where... It was years. Like they were like drip feeding stuff from that movie for like that movie took like 4 years to get made and come out. And they just kept drip feeding stuff. It kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And I'm like, this one, it's like you're getting everything.
It's following the Blumhouse formula. At least they're good movies where they have a conventional setup, but they're giving it a little bit of a new twist, a little bit of something you haven't seen before, and just giving it that little push to make it a unique, worthwhile remake of something else you could traditionally seen, but not in this way. It's really fun. I'm so into it.
Yeah, I will say you do get a glimpse of the Wolfman design. I'm still not into it, but overall, I think the movie looks good, and I can take a really good movie and just kind of like let the weak design just kind of wash over me. I still have some hope there'll be a good one at the end, but we'll see.
Me too. I will say I am pretty like whatever their problems are with the design that everyone and myself is having, they're compensating with the roar is a new fresh roar. It's the way it shows up, the
sounds
speed.
Creepy as fuck.
Like you have to when you adapt a Wolfman and make it into a movie, you have to make it scary somehow because just a dude who has like really big sideburns is not that intimidating. The speed at which this Wolfman moves and the strength which it's implied to have, I'm sorry, but I'm running, and I'm probably not going to win. I'm probably dead if I run away. So this is a scary, scary freaking beast. This is a cool, interesting way to adapt it, and I'm big into it. So
yeah. And the other thing I picked up on was you get to see some of that camera work, kind of like the Invisible Man, like the way it keeps cutting to the condensation covered windshield to build tension. That was cool.
There's that one shot where it's normal him, someone's talking to him, and it swivels around him and it goes into like isolated him, dark background, and that's like the werewolf disease kind of jumbling what English means down to like nothing. You can't understand the people around you.
Yes.
That's so cool. That's so interesting. Your intelligence level is dropping. I can't think of anything scarier than just realizing that I'm losing myself, like akin to like dementia or something like that. That's so scary to me, you know? So, wow. Oh, wow. That's haunting. I'm so excited for this movie. Well, we'll get on to the main topic here. This is a revisit of a topic we've already done. It is the Wikipedia page for the Universal Monsters. It's not a deep dive. That was the episode that I did the most preparation for. I did like at least an hour and a half of prep prior to recording that episode, just on the main topic. This is more just a quick follow-up, like, hey, here's where we are now. Because a few episodes back, we did a show on just the Wikipedia page, and this is weird. Since that video, a lot of the editors of the page have seen and addressed that video that I made on that page, and they've taken some steps, I think, in a very positive direction. Number one, we're going to talk about things piece by piece here, and then we're just going to look at the page and just talk about it. So, big decisions. After my video went up, some editors responded to it and responded to the portrayal.
Nope.
I think the consensus was that I was pretty fair, generally speaking. It's like a long video, so if I got like one or two things wrong, I'm sorry. But, they thought that I was pretty good. They banned A as an editor from the page. They banned him. So, I was speculating, because this is not how Wikipedia works, but I was speculating, what does he have, like master control over the page? Apparently he's just been an editor, but he's been so adamant about that page being in the horrible iteration for the past 6 years that he's just not let anyone else have their day in the sun. So I guess that they just finally said enough is enough. This is becoming a bigger issue. A la my video, which, by the way, this show gets like average 200 views an episode. This is not a popular show. This is not a big show at all. Just the fact that this actually did something is just crazy to me. But they banned A as an editor from the page. He can still talk in the discussion sections and like add his opinion, but he can't actually change anything anymore. That's such a big deal, because that means that unless there's someone else just like this person, which I haven't seen anything of, then this page is going to stay an informative, expansive list of all the Universal Monster associated properties and IP, and I think that's kind of what it should be with every other IP's Wikipedia page. So this is really great. I'm just gonna say it. It literally did everything we asked for at the end of the episode. Like, we went back and forth, like, what are the changes you want to see? What are the changes I want to see? They did every single thing. They didn't color code them. At one point in time in like 2018, it was color coded, which I thought was really funny. But that's fine. That's asking a little too much. But it organized and very informatively portrayed everything for like the past 100 years of Universal Monster stuff. Not even just the movies, but like tie-in properties, TV, whatever else they got. I'm blown away. You ready to hop over to it and take a look?
Yeah, sure.
So, same thing as last time, episode 5, if you're familiar, audience watching this, one of the 200 views. I'm just going to shrink my video and portray this screen so you can see it. Pyramid Head can't see it, but he also has the page open on his own, so we can just follow along, no problem. So let's just go down to this piece by piece here. Let's start right at the top, the Universal Monsters. This description that you see, like with the small paragraph, big paragraph, and then this pop culture icon sentence, this was pretty much all that the page was for like the past 6 years.
Yep.
Nothing else besides this. The logo, notably, is the actual logo that the company, Universal, has used for like a decade, or longer maybe. This is the actual official logo that they've always used, for recents anyway. It's shocking to me that even when A was doing whatever they did to this page, that they didn't have the logo. They just picked a random DVD box logo from one time and was like, this is fine. So
it's because they were obsessed with the idea of it's a home video line.
Exactly. They could not break that idea.
I have an argument to make. I think that's actually a better looking logo, but it's not the official one.
True. This is a pretty simple. It's just words.
It's a box.
It's just words. When I was doing the Universal Monster Podcast logo, which is in real life behind my head, when I did that logo, I initially started just making it like a mock-up of their logo here. but I even thought like this is
Yeah.
way too. It's like I used freaking word art. It's just not even like anything.
Yeah. It's just a box.
It's just the
That's
box.
all it is. It's a box.
Yeah. This page is so much better now. It even is called the Universal Monsters. It wasn't for like ever. Now it actually is.
Yeah, for a while there it was like Universal Studios Classic Monsters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what
Something like that.
that's what A was obsessed with it being, because that's what like a home video line called it once or something. Notably, the original work is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from 1913. That movie was not made by Universal. Universal became the owners of it. I don't know if they bought the studio or the studio like merged into them or something like that. It's like a Disney Fox situation basically. But that's not a Universal monster movie. I guess technically, like by the thinnest hair, the same way that X2 X-Men United is an MCU movie now, if you want to look at it that way. But to me, the first ones were The Hunchback, The Phantom, those classics that got remade later on. If you are to include it, like the Wikipedia page is, well, you start at 1913, and then you have nothing else in the 10s, and jump straight to Hunchback, which is universally recognized, no pun intended universally, as the first Universal monster movie.
It's the first one in my trading card set I have. That includes every random thing.
Yeah, exactly. And granted, every single piece of evidence is anecdotal, but it's fair. It's a fair point. So if we're moving on to the history, which is the next section down, this is actually a really deep, interesting, nice little book report style thing. This is like a nice overview. It's not like super detailed, but it goes over like the highlights, the hits, basically what this thing is. The whole idea is like if you're an observer who has no idea what the Universal monsters are, and you go to the Wikipedia page for information, you're going to learn a lot from this. You wouldn't have for the past like 6 years until this has happened.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next section, we have films. Now, this is where it gets great, but also questionable. Films, it lists them, and it divides them into the classics and the new ones. But it draws a new line between remakes and the modern era, which there's no clear dividing point. Let's just get into it here. So the classic films start with Dr. Jekyll from 1913, which is questionable in of itself. But then it goes into actually all the ones that are conventionally associated with the Universal monsters. These are movies that are released on home video lines with the branding on them, or included in, conventional, like you're saying, trading card sets or whatever else. And it ends with the generally agreed upon end, which is the creature walks among us. So obviously Abbott and Costello met 10 more monsters since then, I'm pretty sure, but that's kind of where it ends.
They also went to Mars.
They also went to Mars on occasion, which is definitely not counted among them, so I'm glad it's not here. Then we get into the remakes. You get Frank Langella, Dracula, starting it as always, and you include all the new ones, the Scorpion King, whatever. Then you go to the modern era, which starts with Dracula Untold. Now, I think this is like this because that was going to be their Dark Universe. Had they actually made the Dark Universe, I can understand this decision to split it here and start this as a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't. And these movies obviously and clearly do not connect with each other. So it just feels to me... Well, sorry, go on.
I was going to say, this division was here before.
Yeah, because
early on, it was divided into remake era and then reboot era.
Yes, and that was because 6 years ago when it was like that, the Dark Universe was not canceled. It was starting now. So obviously you would make it based on what you think is going to happen. But now that we've clearly seen the direction of Universal, which is just go back to letting filmmakers do whatever they want and don't connect anything, which I think is a questionable decision anyway. Now that we've seen that happen, there's no reason not to just make this one big remake era because they're not connecting anything. Now, that being said, I still hold out belief that Lee Whannell's movies, the Blumhouse movies, are going to connect at some point down the line. This is years from now, I'm thinking. But until that happens, I don't see remake and modern era being that different from each other. They're all standalone movies with some sequels on occasion. And they're clearly different than the classic movies. They're not in black and white, but they're not different enough from... The Wolfman 2010 isn't that different from Renfield 2023 in that they don't connect to anything. They don't have a sequel. They're not part of a universe. They're just their own stupid movie. I like both those movies, by the way.
Also, the division makes even less sense because you have Scorpion King 5 is up in the remake era. even though that came out in between movies from later on.
Yes, and they're trying to put it there because Scorpion King and Mummy, Brendan Fraser movies they're putting in the remake era, and they're putting there, but the modern era they're starting with what was going to be their Dark Universe is Dracula Untold
but
starting.
The Mummy 2017 also connects to those movies, so technically it should be up there.
Yeah, that's true too. It's in continuity, which is wild to think about. And depending on who you believe, it's either in continuity with the Brendan Fraser movies or with the classic movies, which is just either of those is crazy to think about. Just wild.
Both those ideas came from Alex Kurtzman, so who knows?
And at one point, Dracula Untold was and now is not canon to that movie. It doesn't matter because it's never going to build to anything. But it's just funny to think about.
I still have my theory that Dracula Untold wasn't meant to connect to anything. They just reshot a bunch of stuff and stuck a cliffhanger on there just on the off chance.
Yeah, exactly. They reshot the ending. They cut out Charlie Cox. They did whatever. And they put it so that it would like launch into the Mummy 2017, which I think is whatever. It's not a bad idea in principle, but the way they did it was horrible.
But it doesn't connect to anything in Mummy 2017.
It doesn't. So much so that if you look at the modern era, which is, let's list these films: Dracula Untold, The Mummy 2017, Invisible Man, Renfield, Last Voyage, Abigail, Wolfman. Despite what I said about Invisible Man and Wolfman eventually connecting, these movies do not connect. They don't. They go nowhere and do nothing.
You have four distinct versions of Dracula in there.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like there's like, for example, if you look at the dividing line between the end of the classics, which is The Creature Walks Among Us, and Dracula in 1979, you can clearly point out of the era stylistic decisions of Creature Walks Among Us and all the 50s movies and 40s and 30s and 20s versus Dracula in 1979 through to Mummy, Scorpion King, Van Helsing. There is a stylistic Hollywood difference because these movies are like decades apart. Like Hollywood as a whole has changed with how they film things and what they do and conventions and just getting into a slightly less theatrical, slightly more realistic shooting style.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have that switch between, say, The Wolfman 2010 and Dracula Untold 2014. Those movies are so similar in tone and style, you could just probably put them in the same universe, which is a bad idea. But, like, I don't know. Like, there's no big jump in time. And like you're saying, since Scorpion King came out after Dracula Untold, the difference between the years and the remakes and the moderns is -4 years, which doesn't make any sense. So, I don't know. It's whatever. It's not important.
Nah,
but
it's a list.
My whole thought process on this is wait a few years, wait for Lee Winnell to do more, Blumhouse to do more maybe, and they'll make more that connect. And then there's a very clear dividing line. You lump Dracula, Mummy 2017, Renfield, Last Voyage, all with the remakes, and then put Blumhouse's continuity as one continuous saga. And that's the third era you're talking about, you know? That's kind of the obvious thing to do if you were to go down that road. Now, if they don't put a line. There's no point for a line. Anyway, we're now getting into your favorite part of the page, which is, you could argue you do an entire podcast just about this subject.
Yeah.
Unmade projects.
Potential projects.
Okay, they're called potential projects on here. That's only because they never announced them canceled. But let's be real.
Yeah, they just haven't. Some of these were canceled. Some of them they just haven't talked about in years.
Exactly. And what that means in Hollywood speak, if something's in development for years with no updates, it's canceled. Like, very rarely do you actually get something made after development hell and no updates. Like Deadpool, the movie, for example.
Last Voyage of the Demeter.
Like, I would bet anybody $100 per film that these are not getting made. But anyway, more importantly, let's go over these films. Granted, small exception, like it lists the James Wan Creature movie that is in development as of this moment, you know, whatever, but the vast majority of these are just dead. So, do you want to just start at the top?
Yeah, we'll start at the top.
Let's fucking go, baby. Dark Army. So, I guess I'll just read what it says here and then just let you, because you have so much more knowledge on these subjects than I do. Paul Feig wants to do an original Monster Mash-esque type of movie with these characters and cited The Bride of Frankenstein as a major influence. I don't know how that makes any sense, but that's what they were working on. So February 2020, they're working on a second draft. And then May of the same year, the filmmaker completed the newest draft. and then said the tone is closer to the original films with horror elements, but a portrayal of the monsters as rejects. And then that's it. Nothing since.
It says he had also been given the option to develop films of any characters from the roster of monsters owned by Universal Pictures prior to choosing this one.
Interesting, because he's just like, I'll choose them all, and then nothing happened.
And also, it was supposed to have original. Let me see if I find the feature monsters from the original movies as well as new characters.
I mean, I can't blame him. I did the same thing for the Devil's League.
Yeah, see, although the idea of it being like a monster mash, I think is cool. Like, just jump straight to the crossover. Why not at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it does give the energy of Warner Brothers going, let's just make a Justice League movie totally separate from everything else we have in development at the moment, like they did for a while there with George Miller.
Yeah, so in principle, doing a separate standalone Justice League movie is not a bad idea. Like, as long as it's made clear to the audience that this is a separate universe. Like, James Gunn understands this, to go stick on the subject of DC, that he can still do Elseworld stuff. It's not a problem. So I guess when you look at this in this context, if your goal is to just give filmmakers what they want to do, give them what he wants to do, and then just keep it and do it your own thing. If your goal is to connect it and make a universe, Dark Army is still a good idea if you start with Dark Army. The analogy of, like, say, the DCEU, where they made whatever decisions, they made Man of Steel, immediately a sequel to Man of Steel with too many characters, and then did like a couple films, jumped straight to Justice League. And I think doing either a build-up of separate films and then doing a team, or starting with the team, was a good idea, but they did neither. They kind of rushed and jammed both together. So, that being said, because obviously it was an analogy, Dark Army is not a bad idea on its own, whether or not you want to do a cinematic universe or just make a film.
I don't know about Paul Feig.
That's what I was just going to get into.
Yeah,
I don't know about this premise. He said The Bride of Frankenstein is a major influence. Obviously, everyone loves that film. I don't see it being like the tone or style of a Dark Army crossover mega monster mash, bro.
No.
Plus, Paul Feig is like, isn't he the Bridesmaids guy?
Yeah, the Ghostbusters reboot guy.
Oh my God. Okay, let's just stick off of that subject. Yeah, no, so he, I don't know. I have no faith in that guy, as opposed to Lee Whannell's Wolfman. Woo, let's go. The next film that was unproduced and potential, Frankenstein, which is going to be the part of the Dark Universe.
Half of it is Dark Universe.
Yeah? Is there a different project?
And then in the other half, it's a different project, yeah.
Oh, you're right. The article doesn't list it as canceled. It's merging a project that allegedly is happening with one that is definitively not happening.
Well, it mentions that one again in canceled projects, but it's a little unclear here.
This is Frankenstein, which is supposed to be the Javier Bardem Dark Universe one. Then, of course, it transitions into talking about the James Wan reboot, which the last thing we heard was from like 2020 that they're going to have a writer do something.
That's probably why we haven't heard anything, because it was 2020.
Exactly. And the plot is allegedly going to center around a group of teenagers who discover that a neighbor is creating a monster in their basement. Sounds a lot like the black girl and her monster, that movie.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So you never got the script to Dark Army. I don't even know if they wrote it. Did you get the script to this one?
I've not seen any of this stuff.
This is crazy. No, whether it's the Dark Universe one or the James Wan one.
There's one from this weird period between Dark Universe ending and where all these weird films were announced around this time that I have a draft of. But I'll get there when we get there.
That's fair.
But it's not listed here. It's not mentioned here at all.
So, what's your opinion on the unmade Dark Universe Frankenstein and then subsequent follow-up, the James Wan reboot that didn't happen?
I mean, I'd like to know more about Bride of Frankenstein.
Yeah.
I'd like to read that script. This one, I mean, just the idea of Bill Condon doing it and Javier Bardem as the monster sounds cool. This whole, like, this post-Dark Universe one just sounds kind of dumb. And a lot of that comes from the fact that when it was first announced, it's not included here, but it was specifically described as like a Stranger Things inspired pitch. It sounds kind of lame.
The next potential project listed is The Invisible Woman by Elizabeth Banks. I don't know if this was like this doesn't look like it got off the ground at all. It seems like it's something that like she wanted to do and Universal said okay, and then nobody followed up.
I think it's because this was announced around the time her Charlie's Angels movie came out and bombed.
Yes, I think that's a huge factor in that. Although she's back on her cocaine bear energy now, so.
Oh, I didn't see Charlie's Angels. I saw Cocaine Bear. It killed any interest I had in Elizabeth Banks as a director.
Yep.
Nah, no, not feeling. The only thing that makes it sound kind of interesting is that the writer, the name here, Aaron Cressida Wilson, has mainly written kind of more serious stuff. So maybe it wasn't going to be a stupid comedy, but I hear Invisible Woman, which was a awful comedy, and I hear Elizabeth Banks, director of that piece of shit Cocaine Bear movie. No.
I don't think Elizabeth Banks chose this project because she has a fondness for the 1940 film. I think she just thought, oh, hey, cool, let's do this. Just the words Invisible Woman, you can do a lot of different premises with that, you know? She's like, I have an idea, I'll try and pursue it. And it obviously never materialized at all. And like you were bringing up with Frankenstein, obviously COVID played a factor here. This is 2019, late 2019 this is happening, so that rolled into that. So still no script from you. I'm so ashamed.
Nope.
I'll be honest. The next film is Monster Mash, which is a musical, which is titled around and centered around the song Monster Mash. I don't know if it's like an adaptation of the song, which have we ever seen anything like that in movies? I don't know if that's a thing.
There was the TV special Mad Monster Party, which I think plays the song.
Yeah, they play the song. I don't know if that's like are you going to adapt like the monster waking up from his slab and then starting to dance and then everyone just shows up and dances?
Yeah, I don't know. This one just seems like they took this Grammy nominee and said, hey, you want to make a musical for us?
Yep, and they said, okay, and then again, February 2020, so COVID just happened now.
And I'm also not in a good frame of mind to say anything nice about jukebox musicals because I saw Joker 2 a few weeks ago. No.
Dracula is this the Chloe Zhao one? It is. It's
They're
the
both,
Chloe Zhao Dracula
There's
movie.
2 different versions in here.
So let's put Chloe Zhao aside. That's a different topic. So Karen Kusama was hired to direct a film centered around Dracula from a script they already had written by 2 other people. The plot was about a modern setting and is a joint between Universal and Blumhouse. And then they said, oh, it'd be a faithful adaptation of the book, including the plot device of being told from various perspectives. Interesting. That is an epistolary novel.
Yes.
It's a type of novel where it's supposed to be things that are existing in that universe that are like, you know, like notes from people and stuff like that, notebook things. Frankenstein was written the same way mostly. So I don't know how you do that in film form. Or is that like a found footage is the only other analogous way to do that?
Or you're showing the characters from their different perspectives.
Yeah, it's still third person. You're just following characters.
And Dracula is kind of in the background.
Look, I'll be honest. I'm not hyped for just another adaptation that's faithful to the book because we have so many freaking adaptations that are just the story of the book. I want to see Dracula do new things in a new context. That's just me. Which, funny enough, is just the Chloe Zhao adaptation. Yeah. But yeah, you can go on for a second.
When both of these things were canceled because it was announced at roughly the same time, apparently the Kusama version was going to be called Mina Harker.
Really? That's an interesting title.
Yeah. And she also said something like, oh, it's definitely not going to be a romantic take at all, which I thought was like, yes, thumbs up.
Thumbs up. Hey, romance is an important part of the Dracula story, but it's not a romance, so that's good. I am not excited for the Karen Kusama project that never happened and never got made. But now we're getting out of COVID.
But I mean, I would need to know more to be excited about it.
That is true. To be fair, we know barely anything about that project. The Chloe Zhao one, which is a futuristic sci-fi western centered around the Dracula character. This is, in terms of what it is, polar opposite to the Karen Kusama one. It is so out there. It may, one could argue, be too out there and too over the top. But you know what? Dracula is one of the most adapted characters of all time. So, yes, please do things that are divergent from what we've seen before. We've seen a million Dracula adaptations. Let's do something new and different. I don't know if this is going to be a good idea.
No, it just sounds random.
It sounds like a different film that they're slapping Dracula into because he's fair use.
It
You know what I mean?
it sounds like, hey, Chloe, you might be winning an Oscar shortly, so let's get
Let's give
you
you this project.
let's give
Yeah.
you a project. And then I think I wonder if well, I actually know the speculated reason for why both these were canceled, but I do wonder if the Eternals performance had something to do with that.
Potentially. I mean, like, that could be completely relevant there. This is February of that year, where that came
Yeah.
out in like November or something.
Yes. But no, these were both canceled in one fell swoop in like May or June, somewhere around there in 2022. And I swear to God, the reason everybody was speculating was because of Morbius bombing.
Like it has anything to do with that decision.
It was like they were, but the speculation was that they were looking at like, oh no, vampire movies aren't working, blah blah blah. Which I don't think that's true anymore. Like it seemed plausible at the time, but because the fact that after that, Universal put out 3 Dracula movies in relatively close succession.
I will say though, like, while I agree it has nothing to do with it, Hollywood does think that way, because if you look at like, and this is something I was looking up when I was looking at the Black Adam history. Warner Brothers was gonna make a Shazam movie in the mid 2000s, but after Speed Racer bombed, they said, "Oh, a Shazam movie wouldn't work now." As if that has anything to fucking do. Like, I don't get the mindset on that at all. What, if any, are your excitements for either the normal Dracula adaptation or the futuristic sci-fi western adaptation?
I'm more interested in normal Dracula, seeing what it would be like in the modern setting. Futuristic sci-fi, I'm kind of morbidly curious about, if only to see what the hell it would be.
I will take an opposite stance. I would say I'm more interested in the really wacky sci-fi, zany, crazy one that's probably not going to be good, versus the Dracula adaptation that's very faithful to the book that I don't think is going to innovate very much. Obviously, neither are going to happen. This is just if it did, you know. Which one would you rather? So, with all that down, let's move on to Little Monsters. In July 2020, this was announced to be in development with Josh Cooley, who is a guy I've never heard of, but I'm sure you're Googling in this moment, hired as both writer and director, with the story centering around the Universal Monster movies, or at least their characters. Inspired and based on drawings of the monster characters by Crash McCreary, who will be given an executive producer, who will be, as if it's still happening. The project is intended to be a love letter to the classic Hollywood and the history of filmmaking, with a story that takes a multi-generational approach to the monsters in a more PG-rated, lighthearted, family-friendly tone in the tradition of the classic 80s Spielberg films to match as well. And a live-action CGI hybrid. Wow, that is really out there. That's almost as crazy as Chloe Zhao's sci-fi western, yes. Dracula.
So I have some thoughts on this one.
Please bring them on.
On its own, I'm not sure. I mean, I do think Crash McCreary is a very good conceptual artist. He came from the Stan Winston school. And looking up Josh Cooley, this guy has some has a pretty interesting history. He worked for Pixar for a long time. He has a screenplay credit on Inside Out, and he has a story. He has a story credit and directed Toy Story 4. And he also just directed Transformers 1, which I've heard mostly good things about.
Yes, I've heard excellent things about that. Mud is in love with that movie. I will say this movie, Little Monsters, seems very Hotel Transylvania-y, like kid-centric. And there is a place for that in horror cinema, yes, to be more like GPG in that realm. It's just not for me in terms of the Universal Monsters. It is not what I want to see out of these characters. It's not what I enjoy about them. You know, like the passion I have for these guys has nothing to do with the child-friendly versions, even though the Universal Monster movies classically could be, you know, backwards compatible for kids and stuff.
Yes. On its own, I kind of agree with you, but the fact that it's a Pixar guy making it and the guy who made some pretty good movies, maybe I'm kind of interested.
Yeah, I'd see it out of curiosity. I trust talent always, but it's just like live action CGI hybrid too. Like, what are they CGI hybriding? Obviously, it looks like this never got off the ground at all, even though it was like, looks like in the middle of COVID, July 2020. Untitled Invisible Man sequel is the next project up. Now, this, I believe, is going to happen. This is probably going to be after Wolfman, maybe after another Universal Monster movie he does, who knows? But this is down the line. Invisible Man made a lot of money. I've talked a lot about how much money that movie made and could have made despite COVID. This is the only one on here that I think is a genuine potential project and not canceled.
Yes, I mean, I'd have to know what the pitch is first, but I'm not against more Invisible Man movies. And where the movie leaves off, it would be interesting if she becomes the villain?
Or at least a central character in a follow-up. Like if you do another one, I don't want her to just never be on screen again or only cameo. Like
Yes.
she's the most interesting part of that movie besides the Invisible Man.
But
So
I'd want it to stay a horror movie though. That's the thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Don't Terminator 2 it where now it's an action movie.
If it's as good as Terminator 2, maybe. But
that would be my counter to myself, where it's like, I mean, well,
maybe lean more towards Aliens, or even though it's more of an action movie, it's still extremely tense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you maintain that horror vibe.
But yeah, good idea. I'd be interested.
The next one is the Scorpion King reboot, which look,
this is the funniest one.
It is. The Rock mentioned this. He said he wanted to do this, and because he's The Rock, people pay attention. This is not happening. This is not a potential project. This should be confirmed as like dead. He wanted one to take place in the modern day and involve a contemporary adaptation of the Scorpion King from 3000 fucking BC. And he said he would produce it and have someone else in the role.
Why?
This is a complete joke. This is a total, absolute joke. This is just... I can't begin to list the reasons wrong with this idea, but let's just start with the obvious here. I mean, it's a gimmick movie. It's a character that should never have gotten a spin-off, let alone 5. It's just because The Rock was like a popular wrestler and he wanted to start an acting career, so the WWE gave him that movie for some reason. And that gave him a career, sure, since that point, but this movie is so bad. There's no source material to use. That movie sucked. There's nothing there that's worthwhile. And contemporary? Like, modern day? Like,
Why?
You want to bring this guy... What, is he frozen in ice? Like, what do you summon him? This is the stupidest idea. Maybe, like, a comedic Phil Lord and Chris Miller route you could take and try and make it watchable. But other than that, this is just a horrible, horrible idea.
It sounds like a platform for terrible fish out of water comedy.
Yes, and that's like the best it could ever be, is that.
But the thing that just baffles me about this is that he goes out of his way to say, I want to make this, but not be in it?
I don't want to get like, oh, I want representation of these characters, but of all the Universal monsters to reboot, this guy? The guy who's not even one? Come on. Like, that's just a joke to
But
me.
I mean, it's like, why do you want to do this and not be in it, Dwayne?
That's true, too. That's weird to me.
I don't get it. And the thing is, even if he was in it, this is well after the time when The Rock stopped making good movies. Mm-hmm. Or at least even stop trying even in the good movies he's in, because I always use like the barometer as I use Fast 5, because in Fast 5, that is Dwayne The Rock Johnson playing the character Luke Hobbs. Every other Fast and Furious movie after that, it's Dwayne Johnson playing Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And not even Fast and Furious, but like pretty much every film he's in, like for the past 10 years, has just been a version of him doing his usual shtick.
It's that, or it's weirdly, of all people to get an actual interesting performance out of him, was Michael Bay in Pain and Gain. This did not deserve the amount of discussion we just gave it. It's so stupid.
That is very true. So let's move on as soon as possible. Untitled film. My favorite title. This is funny. I brought up Lord and Miller just as a chance, but I didn't know that they were in the next topic. In November 2020, it was announced that a project is in development with Channing Tatum as its star. Wes Took is the screenwriter from a story by Reed Carolyn. Lord and Miller were sort of producers alongside Tatum and all these other people. The plot is described as a modern-day, tongue-in-cheek thriller while being a bold genre reinvention of one of the studio's most beloved characters from the Monsters universe. The project will be a joint venture, blah, blah, blah. So, this is barely worth talking about as well. There's no info here. I don't even know what it's about.
It sounds like a Channing Tatum movie.
Do you know any more that's here?
No! I know nothing of this. I didn't even know this was a thing until the page got updated, and I looked at it.
Let's just move on. There's nothing to add.
Channing Tatum's big. Let's get him in a movie. We tried to
Yeah,
get him
like
in Van Helsing and it didn't work.
if they had just mentioned like, oh, this is about a mummy or a wolf man, like, oh, okay, we can talk about it. There's just nothing here to go off of. I like Lord and Miller, and Channing Tatum can be used to comedic effect very effectively. So, like, maybe it would be good. Who knows? Van Helsing. This is Channing Tatum, speaking of.
Yes.
Originally announced in 2015.
This is another one where they mixed up.
This is a reboot of Van Helsing. This is the script that we've read. We've gone over on your show. We've gone over on this show. It's the script that we've all, I guess, like lambasted, but is still somehow one of the best Dark Universe scripts. Placed on hold when the obviously 2017's Mummy bombed. December 2020, it was announced the project had re-entered development with the guy who did Overlord.
Yes.
That is awesome. And then, of course, a rewrite of the script, an original script this time, not connected to that script at all. James Wan is producing. It looks like James Wan's name's on every single one of these that didn't get made.
Yes.
But look, if he's doing it, Julius Avery, count me in.
Yeah, I'm curious as to what it would be.
I know that Universal, despite it making a lot of money, Universal didn't want a sequel to Van Helsing because of the critical reception and stuff like that. But that premise of a monster hunter, the way Stephen Sommers took that like old professor and turned him into like a modern day James Bond monster hunter, now that's the cultural perception of who Van Helsing is. That's such a good premise for a movie, a show, fucking anything. So I'm so into just doing more of that, even if we're not going to get a sequel to that. Taking it in other forms, I'm so down with. Side note, and this was pointed out on another episode, though, when Hugh Jackman was asked about Deadpool and Wolverine, what other role would you like to revisit after 20 years? He said Van Helsing.
That's
so
cool.
like,
yeah.
That's fun. I'm glad that he had fun with it. I know it's never going to happen, Hugh, but like, you keep championing that role. Please, just do it.
Okay, and the screenwriter who Avery was rewriting is Eric Pearson, who most of this guy's career is Marvel.
Really? Is it like
yes.
MCU Marvel?
Yeah, it's MCU. It's almost all MCU.
James Wan's Creature. Now, we already covered this as a news topic a couple episodes ago, but let's just go back into it real quick. I'm going to skip the long, unbridled history of Creature because you've been doing shows and shows and shows about the remakes from like the 80s and into the aughts and stuff like that. James Gunn pitched an adaptation, it's saying here, which is crazy to me. But then Shape of Water happened, which is the best picture of 2017. Of course, Dark Universe announced it as one of their projects. No information, no writers, no directors, dropped it when it got canceled, obviously. Then, of course, James Wan is attached now, and this is still an ongoing thing. James Wan is going to develop, allegedly, as of right now, his name's been attached to a lot of Universal Monster projects that just do not happen. But hey, he's going to make one now, and I'm over the moon because he is early discussions to serve as director, which is real fun for me. I'm a big fan of James Wan's directing abilities. I haven't seen *Malignant*, but I've seen pretty much everything else he's done. I really enjoy Furious 7. I think it's one of the best ones of the series. It's the last great one before they, dropped the ball. And James Wan is a horror director. I mean, come on. He's made some of the most iconic stuff ever. He's worked with Blumhouse all the time. I think there's real potential because Creature, aside from Shape of Water, which isn't even a remake, Creature's never really been remade.
No,
they were almost going to do it for a long time.
Yes, they've tried so many times. They have been trying for 43 years.
It's not like it's like one script that they've been trying. It's not like Megalopolis where like it's just this one movie we got to keep finally getting made. It's like 100 different writers and 1,000 different producers all doing different versions and none of them getting materialized. And I think that is wild that it's finally, God, I can't even say it's finally happening now. Until it goes in front of cameras, I don't put my money into a movie happening at all. And even recently with Warner Brothers canceling made projects, I don't even go that far. So who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, if this works and Juan does it and it's good, I'd like to see him and Lee Winnell collaborate again on one of these.
And of course, you know this, but I'll say it for the audience. Directors attached to remakes include, of Creature, John Landis, John Carpenter, Peter Jackson, Ivan Reitman, Guillermo del Toro, and Breck Eisner. I'm sorry, but like, what conversation are you having where all those directors are in it? Like, that is an incredible array of talent.
Well, I mean, John Landis was actually producing. He wasn't supposed to direct it.
True, and
I'm sorry, I'm being an asshole. Peter Jackson got an offer and said no.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he said no. I'd actually rather do King Kong, and then that got delayed.
Oh, that was in the 2000s era. So wow, that would have.
No, it was in the no. It was in the 90s. It was in like 95,
Oh,
96.
okay.
And he started working on King Kong. It got canceled because Mighty Joe Young bombed.
Mm.
And he went off, did Lord of the Rings, then came back and said, okay, I'm going to do King Kong my fucking way.
So I'm glad Peter Jackson's career took the path it did because I'm so glad the Lord of the Rings movies happened the way they did. I mean, they were going to do Lord of the Rings as like a two-parter, which makes no sense. So I'm glad they finally did it their way. But let's play pretend here. Peter Jackson's creature sounds crazy good. John Carpenter, I mean, I would probably lean more into like the Thing level horror, body horror, shock horror kind of thing.
The script Carpenter was going to direct was the best one. I'm just going to say that.
Oh, okay, good to know. And then James Gunn pitched a creature thing in 2004. This is around when he was writing the Zack Snyder zombie movie.
It was coming off of Dawn of the Dead.
Mm-hmm,
he was like, okay, I'm going to use this clout to do this, but they were already working with Gary Ross at the time.
Yep.
I think Del Toro had come and gone, and then they had moved, and then Gary Ross was writing his draft, and then it's very complicated.
That seems to be the last one. I can't even say it's canceled. This and what the hell is the other one? The freaking oh my god, the Invisible Man sequel are like the only two projects on here that I think are actively potentially developing or gonna be developed at a certain point in the future, as a future. Everything else is all dead. There's no way any of this stuff is happening. I'll be shocked if it does.
You don't think Untitled Film is happening?
Untitled Film is probably just Van Helsing.
I mean, I would love, right, to get Channing Tatum on the horn and be like, no, fuck Gambit. What was your Universal Monster movie?
Let's go back to the original discussion of the Universal Monsters Wikipedia page now that we've done that nice little exercise in our favorite subject of canceled Universal Monster films.
Yes, we get the canceled projects, which is just Dark Universe.
Just Dark Universe. We all know the story about that.
We don't need to talk about it.
In terms of just structuring a Wikipedia page, I love this. I love that they have like
it's
so much information.
Everything.
I mean, it's not going to be as much information as in your upcoming book, but it's still here. It's Cliff Notes. It's enough to get people interested, and I would say it's pretty informative. I mean, at least two of these I didn't know existed. Untitled Film kind of blows me away.
I love the fact that there's a section called Short Films, and it's just that weird Van Helsing anime, and Abbott and Costello meet the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Abbott and Costello Meet the Creature is a television segment which people usually consider amongst the Meat movies, because it kind of is. It's like a short version. You can call it a short film. It's a TV like movie, basically. It's like a less than an hour. Van Helsing: The London Assignment, I contend, is the only official Universal Monster short film ever made.
Yeah, that's fair.
It holds that distinction. I think it really does hold that distinction. There's nothing for Creature. There's nothing for Dracula. Not by Universal, anyway. There's nothing that ties into any of that. This is the only officially sanctioned one. And I think that is notable and unique as a man who loves that film, the Van Helsing film.
I think it was part of Universal going, please fucking hit Van Helsing. We got all this merch.
Yep. Now, is the film that good?
No.
The London Assignment? They casually walk down into hell as like a side quest? Look, it's worth a conversation. We can definitely revisit that.
Yeah, it is the weirdest interpretation of Jekyll and Hyde to ever exist, and I say that with full confidence.
There is a full 2-hour episode of this show waiting to happen that's just about Van Helsing's tie-in media. And this is part of it. But there's so much strange about the London Assignment, and it's also kind of like it's interesting in continuity with the movie, but it kind of retcons some things. I'm not going to get into plot details. I barely remember it, but I remember it having some conflictions there.
Oh, it does. It does.
Yeah, like, my favorite one is that Carl is not a field man, but he was in the field for this film that took place before that film.
And he even says, I'm not a field man.
Bro, you literally just were, like, a day ago.
And they don't match up with anything Hyde says in the Van Helsing movie.
No, not at all. I like how it's structured here. Let's wind the clocks back a little bit. So above short films is television. I guess this is accurate. Monster Force from 1994 and the Mummy animated series are the only two official Universal monster TV shows.
I've never seen them.
I've never seen either of them. They're both worth doing an episode on.
Yes, I don't know if I can get through all 26 episodes of the Mummy the Animated Series in a month.
We can probably watch like the pilot of both and just talk about it. I don't know. But we'll figure all that out. I like this.
I find it interesting that they waited until the sequel to do a cartoon.
Mm-hmm. And I like how the only connective tissue is the character of the mummy. That's it.
Well, it's
otherwise they are completely distinct.
I mean, the animated series, according to this, it has O'Connell and his family in it.
Allegedly, yeah. And I like status ended, as if any of this is ongoing. But yeah, that's kind of funny.
It's interesting that Monster Force is created by Marv Wolfman, who wrote a lot of the Marvel horror comics of the 70s, like Tomb of Dracula.
Yeah, that is true. They know what they're doing. They're getting the right people behind it.
And the fact his name is Wolfman.
Yeah, that's true. That's not even didn't even hit my radar. That's true. You said Wolfman and it blended right in.
Yeah,
but it's literally his name. And Bob Dracula produced this one. All right, but
so we go down to other media.
We'll get there. I want to mention the cast that you want to just blow by.
Oh yeah.
So we're not going to talk about who starred in what. I just want to talk about the structure. I think it's an interesting and probably the best choice to segregate it by decade, because this cast spans so many years, literally 5 or 6 decades worth of Hollywood, the classic movies alone. And these characters kind of carry on into other movies and in each other's movies and sequels and crossovers and comedies and stuff. And there is a lot of different characters playing the same monsters in different eras in time. So this is such a nice little detailed chart that if you're a first timer for this Wikipedia page, you see, wow, Frankenstein monster was played by Boris Karloff throughout the entirety of the 30s. And then by 3 different people in the 40s. That's an interesting piece of trivia, you know? Boris Karloff dodged the role in the 40s and then came back in the 50s to play Jekyll. And no one else. I think this is an interesting way of looking at it. And when you chart it all out like this and condense it to be just by decade, you kind of see some interesting overlaps. Lon Chaney Jr. played Wolfman. He played basically everyone in the 40s. His name's all over the 40s. But Lon Chaney Sr. was all over the 20s, and he's skipping the 30s. And I don't know. This is an interesting way to look at it, to see who pops up where and when at what age. You know.
I find it very funny that the 2 biggest blocks are the Gill Man, because he had different people playing him.
Yeah.
On land as opposed to water, and then just 2 slots below him, you have Matthias.
Yeah. Yes. I didn't pick that up. That's so funny. Gilman and Matthias took the exact same amount of people to portray. Gilman, mind you, 1 trilogy. Matthias, 5 spin-off films, which is ridiculous. I guess technically 6 films because he's in the second Mummy. This is probably the best way they could have done it, because the alternative is that you have it by every year, and then you have to side scroll so far to get to anything worthwhile.
Yes. It's a well put together chart.
Everyone gets their own slot. Freaking Han the Dragon Emperor by Jet Li gets its own slot, even though it was never a character and never is after that point.
Nope.
So that's pretty funny. But yeah.
Scroll
all right. Well, that's
down.
just the cast thing. I wanted to get to the cast thing and just mention that because I think it was really interesting. But all right, we talked about the television shows. We talked about the short films. Other media. Now, why the Devil's League isn't in literature is a crime amongst men. So I don't know who I got to sue.
I find this first heading really funny. That home video releases is such a small part of the page when that was the obsession for so many years.
I know. And you know what's funny? I actually didn't mind the... I just showed it. If you click the show button, it's back. I was literally in the middle of saying I didn't mind that chart and that list because it was pretty useful information. It was interesting. Mm-hmm. Well, it's still here. It's just naturally hidden when you open the page, which is pretty funny to me. But yeah, that's a cool piece of information because that's the origin of the name Universal Monsters. That's the origin of calling them that is from that 90s video line. So I like how it's portrayed here. Literature. All right. I have read, let me just double check this real quick. Aside from the intro to Return of the Wolfman, I think I've read none of these.
I read years ago. I read Shadow of Frankenstein, and I read some of these ones in the middle, the Scholastic ones. I read, and I read them when I was like in the fourth, fifth grade. But it's been a good long time.
Mm-hmm. I will say I own quite a few of these books. I like tie-in Universal Monster Media, and one day when I have more spare time, I'm happy to sit down and read them. But I remember when I was writing The Devil's League, I specifically didn't want to look at like tie-in adaptations of these monsters. I wanted to do something like kind of original, so I purposely avoided them. Now that the book is out, I should probably spend some time and revisit them.
I
I have a few of them.
I have one criticism of this chart in that they leave out the sequels to Return of the Wolfman.
Wasn't it by a different guy?
Yeah, they were both by a different guy.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know, but it's official Universal. It should be here. But all right, those are the novels. Here come the comics, and I didn't know they got so few comics. I thought they got more than this.
These may be the only ones they know about. So I haven't read any of these Dark Horse ones.
Me neither. And I haven't read any of the new ones either. I have Dracula saved. I need to watch it. It's a quick little tab. I just got to click and sit down one day and do it.
I've been reading them. Creature from the Black Lagoon Lives was also very good, but the ending was weird and kind of fizzled out a little bit. Whereas like with Dracula, it like skips over a ton of stuff between issues 3 and 4. This one just kind of got to the end and was like, yeah, that was okay. And we're currently halfway through Frankenstein, and it's a very interesting approach to the story. And so I'm curious to see where it goes. But that the next issue I don't think is out until like after we record this. So
the next section here is theme park attractions.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I just love this page so much. It's so informative. It's got like everything. It's got a little bit of everything, which is exactly what you need. So Halloween Horror Nights, which is their like classic thing that they've always done since like making the Universal Monsters a thing. Revenge of the Mummy, which is like its own ride.
I've been on that. And then
of course, I've never been on it. Universal Epic Universe. Now, I stopped in Florida recently, unrelated, on a different trip. I got that Dark Universe piece of merchandise. Hang on, let me go back to OBS here. I'm going to blow up my screen. I got that Dark Universe poster right there, and I'm very proud of it. I also got a shirt that matches, not the Team Kong shirt. I got the actual shirt that looks like that, and it's just a beautiful piece of art. I know it's just promotional to like get their park going. I know it's not going to actually like they're not going to make a movie out of it, but like this is like the coolest thing ever, and one day I'm going to frame that. So yeah, I'm really excited to go to the Epic Universe next year when it opens up. It says it's going to open on May 22nd of next year, which is interesting.
I'm excited to go there eventually.
I'm going to be an old man by then. I'm going to be 28, falling apart, crumbling to dust.
I'm going to be 33. I'm going to be Jesus age.
Then, of course, Legacy. And again, there wasn't even a Legacy section on this fucking page for the past 6 years. Like, the whole point of these characters is the legacy that they're still making stuff about them. Anyway, I love this stuff. So this has like a little piece of information here. It says like, oh, it's influenced the horror genre. Yeah, no kidding, because horror movies were pretty much only made by Universal popularly in the entire 30s and 40s and 50s. They branched out to other studios and stuff, but like Universal kind of owned the horror landscape, the whole situation back then. So of course they influenced horror films from that point forward. They're the only ones doing it. They're the only game in town. And then, of course, the popularity of the franchise led to various unrelated media based on the characters. The Munsters franchise is listed here. Now, we did the Munsters Rob Zombie film as a Monster-thon. We definitely shouldn't have, but it was such a funny idea, and it got such bad reviews, we were like, fuck it.
I think I suggested that as a joke, and then you went with it.
You might have, yeah, but it was already cooking, I was like, fuck it.
That movie.
But yeah, no, that franchise is very closely associated with this because it's directly based on. It's like a parodic kind of story that's like, makes it like a sitcom. Like all the classic characters in their, former glory are all showing up here. And that's the end of the page, and tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of worthwhile references here. So, look, this page is the best thing ever now. This is a century-long franchise. Not a lot of franchises in Hollywood can say that they're a centuries-long franchise. It is the best version it's ever been. Whether it's earlier Wikipedia versions of this, earlier fandom versions of this is the best it's ever been. And I'm so proud. There's still a bump in the road or two, but they're all understandable. Like, I can reasonably see Dr. Jekyll 1913 being included in this list. I see why that argument is there. I don't agree with it, but it is whatever. And I think it's just like a near perfect page. Like they did literally everything we asked for, they just fucking did. So I have to do a huge thank you to the editors behind this freaking article. I don't know if I was the main cause. I don't know if like by chance they decided to fix everything immediately after we uploaded that, but they did everything right. It's perfect now. So thank you. Thank you for what you did.
Yes.
You know, we had other news topics that I totally didn't even get to because we were just talking about this the whole time, like the Spanish show about the Spanish Dracula. That'll be next episode probably.
Oh, a Spanish Dracula episode.
Spanish Dracula, yeah. So,
you'll have to actually watch the movie for that, you know.
Well, no, I don't know about that. It might be a step too far.